Eugene, hi. Well, first of all, thanks for giving us this interview in this particular time we're living on. We're very happy to have you. So, thanks a lot for your experience, for your music, for your kindness. The first question we want to ask you is if you remember the first time you ever heard a ska tune, a ska melody back in the day.
Hello everyone, I am Eugene Gray. I am one of Jamaica's pioneer in jazz reggae. I'm a guitar player and I'm in the same category with Ernest Ranglin and Monty Alexander. Just to inform you a little bit more about my background, I have played with everyone, recorded with everyone, toured with a lot of people such as Toots and the Maytals, Gregory Issacs, the Skatalites, Horace Andy, Max Romeo, Bob Andy, Burning Spear, and all of these beautiful people. Today I live in America and I do perform and travel under my own name, the artist known as Eugene Gray. I also have created an organization called Rootz of Music. It is spelled R-O-O-T-Z. And in that organization, we have created a program that is called the American Roots of Jamaican Music. And what do? We educate people as we entertain them. Because for me to understand anything at all in life, you need to go back to its genesis. So a lot of people have no idea that Jamaica's original music was not just ska and reggae, but mento. So in my program, we begin our program with lecturing, doing master classes and bringing my band to play mento, which is Jamaica's roots music. Then we get into ska and give you the history of ska, which the Jamaicans adapted from the American shuffle. That's where it all began. So here we are, here I am. I have many albums under my name too. My latest album is called Straight Ahead and Beyond. And what I did, I feature a lot of straight ahead jazz along with other arrangements. Here's a copy of what it looks like. So this is my latest. It's a 2 CD set. And I'm looking for people to go online, and it's all on the social medias. So you can check out my work. I have other albums, Authentic, Shades of Grey, and you check out my name and you will find all my albums. There I have quite a few, 5 or 6 albums. All right, so looking forward to seeing you people, talking with you, playing and jamming with you when I come down to Argentina. Now, I was asked a question if I can remember the first time that I heard ska music. Now, ska started in the middle 50s, early to middle 50s to the 60s. Ska concluded its tenure on about 1966 when Rocksteady came in. The first time I heard ska, it was on a sound system. Sound system, again, is another Jamaican invention. I also lecture about these things in my performances. I remember this sound system from a neighboring parish. In our country, a parish is like a state. And there was a famous sound system by a gentleman who called himself Count Eric. In those days, you know, people took on different nom de plume. They called themselves lords, kings, and dukes, and all that, and counts. Count Eric's sound was an amazing sound system with good bottom end. And as a boy, you know, we loved to listen music with heavy bass because all we had then was radio. And most of the radio had no bass. They did not really sound big as with the sounds we have now. So I heard some songs playing on Count Eric's sound system. And it was amazing. That's when I heard the first term that's ska. And now that I'm a musician and I remember the song, can't remember the lyrics, but I remember the music. And what stood out to me was the guitar that played the introduction. I was able to meet the guitar player who played on the record. So it was guitar, bass, drums, and the bass was upright bass because in that time, upright bass was popular and the Jamaican music was not totally in its own quite as yet. It was still impersonating the American sounds. And the magical thing is that even the drums then might not have been a one-drop drum, but it was a swing drum, just like the American music. So that was the first ska that I can remember hearing, and I heard Rico Rodriguez was playing on another one. Later on, I knew it was Rico. At that time, I probably was between the ages of 8 and 11. So, you know, I was pretty young. I've never seen most of these instruments that I'm listening to in the records. But later on, you know, becoming a musician, I realized what they were, and was fortunate to have met Rico, work with him, and so forth.
You're one of the creators of these fabulous styles, ska, reggae, rocksteady. What can you tell us about that? How was it like growing up in Jamaica?
Growing up in Jamaica, during that period, the musicians of my generation, what we had in the country, I was born and raised in the country, I'm not a city boy. All we had was the radio. Most people had radio. And our music, ska, was not, it did not come into being yet. All we were hearing was American music. So we were familiar with Duke Ellington, Count Basie, a lot of the American singers, Chubby Checker, Little Richards, Pat Boone, Elvis Presley, Fats Domino, Roscoe Gordon. So we knew all of these songs, and this is the type of music that we grew up with. I wasn't fortunate enough to have had formal training, and most of the musicians of my time, in the era that I lived, I should say, we did not have access to formal training. The musicians who lived in the city, like in Kingston, and Kingston was a center, it's the capital of the country, and you know, all pioneering things happened there. They had better access to formal training. So I had to teach myself. My first instrument was a harmonica that I started playing when I was 9. By the time I was 11, I was an expert player. I started high school at age 12, and we put together a band in high school. And the following year, which was 1964, we won first place in a national competition called Pop y Mento, with a song that I composed, and I was a lead instrument in the band. We called our band the Serenaders, and we were all high school kids. I was 12. My friend Anthony Ramsey, who bass player, he was probably 14, 15. Eric Frater, who they call Rickabacker, who eventually played with Bob Marley and created the chick, chick. He was also in the band. His dad was the principal of the school. We had Brian Atkinson, another great bass player, who went on to work in Studio One. Jerry Lewis, piano and bass. We had Charles Barry Dixon, also on drums. And Earl Hedrum, they call him the Pope, on vocals. He's an acclaimed vocalist in Canada today. That was our band. Growing up, this is what it was like. So seeing big orchestras and all that was not our experience. Having people to teach us was not our experience. We had to teach ourselves. So I taught myself the harmonica. By age 14, I picked up a trombone, because for me the harmonica started to become a little bit limited. I used to hang out at my friend's Tony's house because they had a piano, and I wanted to learn the piano. So I would hang out at his house, and I taught myself the basics and piano. Also, in our high school band, I started to teach myself drums. By the time I was 14, Tony and Brian, Jerry, Barry, all of these guys, they moved on. They were seniors for me, so they graduated and they moved on. I needed to play an instrument, and I had no instrument, because the trombone that I was playing was not my own, belonged to another student who had graduated and went on. So I decided I'm going to make an instrument, because my parents at the time were not interested in having me become a musician. So I decided to make me a solid body guitar. And that's what I did. I asked my friend, who was 14 but a skillful carpenter, to cut the design that I made. I understood electronics, because my dad, his hobby was building and repairing radios and amplifiers. I understood how the pickups work. So I made a pickup and I stick it on it. But the funny part of it, I had no money to even buy strings. And in the country, you could not find any place that sell guitar strings. So I used some of the wires that my dad had, that he used in his radio, and make strings. But I could only steal enough wires to make 4 strings. so I started to teach myself bass, and I love bass anyway. So I became a bass player. By age 15, I started to play with a band in the following parish called the Monarchs. I was their bass player. Guitar is really the last instrument that I picked up. So a little bit of what it was like growing up. What was really around me a lot as music is some of the traditional music, the same Mento music, and it was played on traditional instruments. The banjo, very African, a rhythm guitar, a tumba drum, maracas, claves, vocalists, and sometimes you have someone playing a penny whistle, a fife, a flute, or a clarinet, and that is basically the Mento sound. So that answers the question.
Can you tell us about your musical background? And also, when you decided to become a guitar player?
Later on in my career, and this happened when I came to America, I collaborated with Sly and Robbie. I toured with them for a year. I had an amazing time with Burning Spirit. I mean, that was just fun. It's a very eclectic thinking band with Rootz Reggae. And we guys used to just take the music into different dimensions. I really enjoyed that. I did a tour with Gregory Issacs. I toured with Toots and the Maytals, Kulcha, as I mentioned, Frankie Paul. My first introduction for performance in Europe, started in England, was with Horace Andy and Bob Andy. I went as the music director, and we toured sharing the stage with another great band out of England called Matumbi, with Bevan and Utan. And it was just a magnificent experience. I was asked to mention that I was one of the studio musicians with Lee Scratch Perry back in the 70s. I was introduced to him through another mutual friend who was one of his artists called Shenley Duffus. You guys can check out Shenley's music too. I need to mention my wonderful friend, God rest his soul. But I would be doing sessions at Randy's studio with, this is the first time I met Family Man and Carly Barrett, these guys who would later become a part of Bob Marley's Wailers band. So I was recording with Bobby Ellis, Bobby Calfat, Jackie Jackson, same Family Man, and a bunch of people doing tracks for Lee Perry. And he would use his tracks in different varieties for his different artists, Shenley or Bob. When Bob would come on his island tours and come to the North Coast, where I was a resident musician working in the clubs and the hotels, I would be the person, my band would be the person, the band that backs Bob Marley. So, you know, we knew each other way back. I knew the I-Trees from, they were working with Federal Records, calling themselves the Soulettes. So, you know, that's part of my experience back in Jamaica. I also worked with Fab Five. I was the second lead guitar player with Fab Five, one of the great bands out of Jamaica. They're still going strong. I left the Fab Five and then hooked up with the Caribs at the Sheraton, one of the most eclectic bands that I have worked with, and just great joy. Back in the early days before I went to Kingston, because all of this now happened in Kingston, right out of high school, I was 17, and the band started in Westmoreland. That is the next parish. I was invited to join the band, and I thought I was going to be the bass player because I was playing bass at that time. When I got there, to my wonderful surprise, they had Brian, my friend Brian Atkinson. We went to high school together, and he was a part of our high school band. He just returned from Kingston playing as a studio musician at Studio One and playing with Tommy McCook and all of these guys. He was going to be the band leader. So they switched me to guitar. And this is how I started to play guitar. So there you know a little bit more. All right.
Some people think ska is not meant to be mixed with other styles. What do you think about that?
I might have said it already, but the Christian also emphasized that a lot of people think that the music must be pure. What is pure? Remember, you have organum before they were baroque. So everything has to evolve. It's only a law of nature that the law of perpetual motion. Once something is set into being, it's going to grow, it's going to evolve. It's only natural. So do not resist change. What I would advise is that the people who love the ska, love all the different music, you are not Jamaicans, much more than I am American. But you can use the element because each culture has something interesting. Choose the best from each culture. Choose the best from your culture. Incorporate it into the ska. You'll be surprised sometimes the beautiful thing that come about. Even if you listen to early ska or early reggae, how the different subgenres come right into being. You have reggae with the swing, you have flyers reggae, you have steppers reggae, you have roots reggae, you have reggae with the one drop, you have reggae with the sly and rabbit, R&B type style. All of those things, it was only possible because people were open-minded and being pioneering. Jamaica had a major renaissance, and I am a child of that renaissance. So that's why I'm very open-minded. And here I am in America. Today I have a degree in composition. I study classical music. So I'm using all of these elements. Classical music taught me structure. And that's what you hear in my records. But the jazz in me also gives me freedom. It gives me freedom to express. When I'm going to improvise, it isn't pre-planned. It isn't written. I'm making it up as I go along. And trust that what I'm doing would make sense. I'm trying to trigger your emotion. And that's what the music is for. It is there to wash your soul. Just like soap washes your body. This is our job. We use sound, we use tones and rhythms to touch people's emotion.
You are a very eclectic musician. In your solo albums, we can hear ska, reggae, but also jazz, classical music, mento, calypso. What can you tell us about that?
I was asked to express a kind of an eclectic approach to my personal albums. Because even though you can hear the roots reggae and the ska and everything else, you hear other elements. I believe in that. Because as a young musician growing up, I listened to everything. You see, at that time, we only had 2 radio stations, and they played everything. Jamaica also had a population of Chinese and Indians, people from East India. There are days of the week that their music was being played on the radio. So I listened to everything, and that helped to shape my thinking as to be eclectic. As I came into my element as a young musician, I learned that the early Jamaican musicians who translated the American rhythm and blues, the music of Louis Jordan, Louis Prima, Roscoe Gordon, they were jazz musicians because jazz was a big thing in Jamaica. Very, very big thing. We had orchestras just like America had them. You had the Count Basie and the Duke Ellington. We had the Mapplethorpe Poe. We have the Bertie King Orchestra. Many of them. So many. So they were all jazz musicians. Some of them used to also work in the casinos in Cuba back in the day before the revolution. So these were really trained musicians. So that is on one side of the coin. The other side of the coin, you had great Jamaican musicians who were classically trained. So all of that were there. So the music we heard, we tried to extract the best out of it. The best rhythm and blues. When you listen to Charlie Parker, you listen to Roscoe Gordon, Louis Jordan. These guys were phenomenal jazz players. And as a matter of fact, Louis Jordan is the person who is accredited for bringing rock and roll, extracting that out of jazz. There was no rock and roll before that. So in my music, you hear all these elements because these are the things that inspired me. I love history. I love information. I love knowledge. And what history has taught me is that nothing new just came into its own just by chance. Everything came from something else. And with due respect, a lot of these older musicians could not even imagine the big industry that the music has become. Giving them a little bit of credit, I need to bring elements that I learned from them because they helped to set up the language. So I'm keeping a lot of that language. And another way of expressing this, I like to use food as an analogy for music. If you're making some soup, it's not just meat and water. you need other little ingredients. And this is what I've learned how to extrapolate from classical, from some Chinese scales, from some Latin, Cuban interpretation of stuff, you know, and put it right in my music. And I think it's also minimized boredom. I'll get bored if I keep doing the same thing over and over. So well, I can't dictate, but my advice to young musicians, be open-minded. If you keep repeating the same thing over and over, you're going to get the same result. So remember now, ska didn't exist at a time in history. Rock and roll didn't exist at a time in history. The blues didn't exist at a time in history. But here they are. Now we developed ska. From ska came rocksteady. Then came reggae. Now we have dancehall, we have reggaeton, and everything else. So keep playing the music, play all of it. Because they say, only the music shall live. Music alone shall live. All right?
As you know, we're putting together a ska movement down here in Argentina. More than 60 bands from all over the country got together, got their strength and their time for this to grow. We would very much like you to be a part of it.
There is a proposed ska movement for Argentina. I am 100% for it. Anything for the music. And what I love, when people get together, new ideas come into being. I know when you guys begin to come together and experiment and talk and project, you're going to have very, very positive results. So I would love to be a part of that ska movement. Because, you know, Argentina is really my home away from home. I love that place. I love the people. I love Patagonia and all of those places. I love Buenos Aires, Córdoba, so many places.
We are living in COVID time. What do you think about the future? And more precisely, what do you think about the music will be in the future?
The big question. We are living in COVID time. I was asked, what do I see for the future? We are living in very unpredictable times. We have a Donald Trump here in America. We have all kind of a desperate, power-seeking people all over the world trying to dictate the lives of others. I don't know for sure what to expect, but one thing I wish not to happen, because I also see this, where automation seems to be the focus of places like America or China. I hope that music is not, let me say, they don't put a ban on it and it becomes illegal, where music cannot be created by a real musician but created by artificial intelligence. That for me is a scary thought. And I hope that never happens. Now, on the flip side of that, the music of the future, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. All the ingredients are here already. From classical to jazz, we have so many subgenres in between. So, we can use all those ingredients and the technology that we have now. When I was growing up as a young musician, you could not find an electronic tuner for any instrument. We tune from an organ or a piano. That's it. And you use your ears. Now we have all kind of instruments that can, and gadgets that can manipulate sound. Let's use all of that and make amazing music. There has been a systematic attack also on positive music, especially in the past 30 years. Many artists have been disillusioned, discouraged, and sometimes completely destroyed. While the airwaves were being flushed with all kind of negative negative and disjointed rhythms and words that just completely negative and evil. The musicians of the future for me, you have to take charge. All of us have to take charge who are here. And flush the airwaves. I mean, wash it like detergent. Wash the airwaves with some positive music, because it is not only good for us as humans, it's also good for the environment. It's vibration. It is sound. What is sound? Something that you can't see, you can't smell, you can't touch. You can hear it, you can feel it. And using the magic of sound, vibration against ear, can invoke so much emotion. With kinetic energy, if we are vibrating in the right place, even the animals and the plants, they respond to it. And we, being the more dominant creature on the planet, it is also our duty. So I'm looking forward for, a wonderful future in music, because the negativity has to leave. There's only so much it can do. Either it destroy itself or it destroy us. And I don't think we are going to sit around and allow it to destroy us. I think it has gone as far as it can go. Let's flush the airwaves. There are a lot of wonderful artists, very creative people in every genre, on all different instrument and vocal ability, sitting on very positive material, ready to give it to the world. So let's focus on that.
Can you tell us some insights about Bob Marley? We also videos, interviews, shows, but you know the guy. You performed with him. You recorded with him. What can you tell us about the real person, the real Bob, the human being, not only the musician?
I was asked, I almost forgot, I was asked to say a little bit about Bob as an artist, as a human being. And my experience with Bob, meeting Bob about 1971, 72, I backed him at the Palladium Theatre in Montego Bay. In front of the Palladium Theatre is the Yellowbird Club that I used to work. And our band would back him when he comes and stuff. He is one of the most amazing persons, very focused. Is a no-nonsense, high-disciplined, extremely talented person. And he puts his whole being into what he's doing. Bob would perform and do some things on stage. Even when he falls off the stage, he just turned it into part of the act. And because the emotion is so strong within him. And sometimes you can see when he moves on stage, even with his guitar, with the Wailers band. I remember that little body language of his. As a person, principled man, very principled. He treated everyone with respect. I treated the musicians with respect. If you happen to have played on a record for him, before your session is completed, the most beautiful signature is on your check. And to show you how generous he is, he was. When I was working at the Sheraton as a resident musician, I was getting one of the best salary in the island at the time. I was making 130 Jamaican dollars. That time it was a lot of money. I was living well. My rent was only $20, so I was living well, $20 per month. And I thought I was so hot. When Bob Marley and his band came off tour, in the off season, he had his guys on retainer. They were getting 300 US per week. When I was making 130 Jamaican per week, and I thought I made a lot of money. Though, at the time, let me say this, the Jamaican dollar was bigger than the US dollar. It was $1.20 US, but it still don't measure up to 300. Bob made sure that his musicians had cars to drive, and they also had roofs over their heads. He was serious about business. And Bob was so focused and active. He acted upon what he says. He understood the business very, very well. He understood publishing and marketing and all of that stuff. I think the record companies were terribly afraid of him. And, you know, there's all kind of rumors about stuff. I would not rule anything out. The things I know now, I don't rule anything out. But this, I had to add. I think the Holy Creator has multiplied his blessings, especially financially, even now that he's gone. In so many different ways. He's one of the most sold deceased artists. And there's a good reason for it. Because he was very generous to people. And I think that's why his blessings, and it goes right back to the kids right now. That's why he was so blessed. Thank you.
Okay, dear friend, that's all for now. Thanks for your time, for the interview, for your kindness. Thanks to your wife, Felicia, who is a sweetheart. Send my regards to her. And I hope I'll see you again soon in post-COVID time, so we can perform and have our talks. People love you here, so we are expecting you to come as soon as you can. Bye-bye. Take care, my brother.
And back to the post-COVID world. Definitely. My first opportunity, I'll be heading back to Argentina. I'm going to be a part of the ska movement, and I'm going to play my ska and my jazz reggae and everything else. And the jazz reggae is not even so new. Some of the older jazz musicians were doing that. It just didn't get its chance to be marketed as such. And another reason why I'm doing that, in the industry, most promoters do not focus on instrumentalists. They do not focus on musicians. They focus on singers. That has to stop. I need to have that environment to express myself as an instrumentalist. Nothing against singing. Love singing, I sing too. But you have to practice your craft without any reservation. So I want the freedom to just explore and do the impossible on my instrument, as Jimi Hendrix did on his guitar. But I'm doing it in my jazz reggae style. So I am doing this so that we can even create a new market for instrumental reggae as instrumental ska. So I hope I said a good mouthful, and I'm looking forward to having fun with all of you. God bless you.